Welcome to an intimate conversation with LGBTQ plus women of color and allies. I'm your host, Deneen L. Garrett, and I want to welcome you all to the first episode. This episode is me sharing a little bit about myself. I wanted to start a podcast about a year ago, and I waited on other things to happen before getting started. Then in December, I decided, hey, let me go for it. Then I let something else get in the way. And this time was figuring out, what platform to use. Do I need to buy a browser? What do I do? How do I get started? And so I let that get in the way. Then I happened to listen to my sister's podcast, and she shared how she started her podcast free on Anchor. So now the problem or issues that I was facing, the things that I put in front, that was no longer an issue because here was this free platform. But then something else happened. So fast forward to the last month, I was thinking, what can I do, especially now during COVID-19? What things can I do? I mean, it's so limited because we're, safe at home. So travel is out, hanging out with friends, doing a lot of things outside of the home was kind of taken off the table. So as I prayed and asked myself, what's next for me? What can I do? Two opportunities were presented. And when those opportunities were presented, I didn't see them for what they were until later. And those opportunities, when I thought about it and when it finally hit me, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I was asking for. I was asking for my next, and here's that opportunity. So as I was sharing those opportunities with my coach, he pointed out how, get started, that there's people out there that want to hear from you, that he and I both can share the same message, but there will be people who will not receive it from him, but will receive it for me. And so that brought everything to light for me. And I realized that the two external uh, presentation opportunities was exactly a way for me to get exposure. And it was also a way for me to bring life to my podcast. So later the same day, as I was walking on a treadmill, I was reading Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And she, in the book, talked about vulnerability. And it hit me. That's what's been holding me up with certain things, being vulnerable, wanting to make sure things were perfect first, making sure that things were in alignment, which, yes, alignment is very important. However, I needed to stop putting other things in front of me. I needed to go ahead and choose me and make the things happen for myself. So here I am, being vulnerable, starting this podcast. Really don't know what I'm doing, hoping everything works well. But wanted to share a little bit about myself before I start talking about this podcast and the purpose of this podcast. So back in 2017, I created a panel, an intimate conversation with LGBTQ plus women of color and allies. And I brought together a group of women. Some of them were in the community. Others had corporate responsibility, like myself, for strategy for the LGBTQ plus community. I repeated the panel the next year. That year that was 2018, we got real deep. Shut the door, told everybody I was Oprah-ish, and we were letting our hair down and just allowed the women to share more about themselves and their journeys. And so, again, I had women who were in the community as well as responsible for corporate strategy. This past year, um, it was the focus was matriarchs of color. So I had women who all, as a matter of fact, this time I had, actually, I did have one ally, but there were three women who were or are in the community. All of these women are still living, so they are in the community. And one and they were all mothers, and one was a mother of a daughter who was in the community. And unfortunately, her daughter had passed not even a year before the panel. So it was raw and it was real. All of these conversations were so needed, as we were told. I wanted them to be real. I wanted it to be intimate. I wanted us to share with the audience, why we were doing the different things that we were doing in our various experiences, with the thought that somebody in that audience needs to hear it. So here it is. I created a panel to give women a platform because women of color, we have voices. We don't always have a platform. And then I, did it for women in the audience who needed to hear the messages. And if you caught what I said I did it for uh, women and people who needed to hear it. So look at me coming back to exactly what my coach said, that I have something to say that others need to hear. And so as we go on through this journey, it's just not going to be me talking. I will have guests. I will have, I'm going to tap into my resources. I'm going to tap into the women who have already been a part of my panel, which we're all now a sisterhood, and for them to share their stories, their journeys, talk to other women, other allies, for them to share why they do what they do, and just to learn more about what it is they're doing, and then to meet new women who want to share their stories. Because women of color have a lot to say. It's needed, it's valued, and we don't want to forget about our LGBTQ plus sisters either. And they definitely have something to say, and they definitely are in need of a platform. So that's what an intimate conversation with LGBTQ plus women of color and allies, that's why it exists. So bear with me on this journey. We are writing this together, and I appreciate you all for taking the time to listen. Please share. Please continue to listen. The plan is to have a recording, at least a session, an episode at least once a month. Would like to do more, so we'll get to that point. But I will just make a promise right now that I will do once a month, and we'll see how that goes. So thank you so much once again for listening, and please share. Hey, some of you may be like me. I was in search of the perfect platform for my podcast and stumbled across Anchor by listening to my sister's podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you more about it. First of all, it's free. Yes, free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you. So you don't have to deal with getting connected to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more because Anchor does it for you. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast in one place. How convenient. Download the free Anchor app